Coming up on this Monday edition of Newsline at noon, Korea's ruling party vows to push ahead with this afternoon's planned confirmation vote on Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-ko despite strong objections from the main opposition party. The Islamic State terror group releases a video appearing to show the beheadings of 21 Egyptian Christians in Libya. Egypt's president vows to avenge their deaths. Plus, Danish police kill a 22-year-old man suspected of the Copenhagen shootings. The country's leader vows to protect freedom of speech and Denmark's Jewish community. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
It's new Monday, February 16th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, the National Assembly is going to vote later today on the confirmation of Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-ko.
The nominee is mired in controversy and the main opposition camp strongly opposes him becoming Prime Minister. Park Ji-won reports.
The ruling Saenuri party, which holds a majority in parliament, says it will push ahead with the confirmation vote for Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-ko, who used to be its former floor leader up until late last month. The ruling party is stressing that the rival parties agreed last week to hold a vote during Monday's plenary session, and there should be no further delays to avoid a vacuum in state affairs.
I sincerely urge the opposition parties to attend Monday's plenary session in order to proceed with bills aimed at revitalizing our economy and helping working people.
The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is demanding Lee withdraw from consideration due to a number of allegations swirling around him, from real estate speculation to the way he accumulated his wealth.
The nominee has to step away from consideration because he lied in front of the people.
This is the Park administration's third attempt to replace incumbent Prime Minister Chung Hong-won. Chung offered to step down in the wake of last April's Seoul ferry disaster. However, he has remained in his position until now, as two previous nominees were forced to withdraw for various reasons. If Lee is confirmed, the president's office is expected to carry out a small reshuffle, including cabinet members and presidential aides, based on the new prime minister's recommendations. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
A new video by the terrorist group that calls itself Islamic State appears to show the gruesome mass beheadings of 21 Egyptian Christians. Now, the killing this time took place in Libya, a country outside the group's stronghold, adding to concerns that its reach is expanding. Connie Lee has the story.
Egypt's president says his country will avenge the killings of its people by the terrorist group calling itself Islamic State.
Egypt reserves the right of retaliation, and with the methods and timing it sees fit for retribution from those murderers and criminals who are without the slightest humanity.
His televised statement comes just hours after the militants released a horrifying 5-minute video on Sunday, appearing to show the beheading of 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians. The killings take place not in the militant group's known territory of Syria or Iraq, but in Libya. Egypt's state-run news agency quoted a spokesperson for the Coptic Church, confirming that the 21 Egyptian captives were dead. In the video, the victims, all male and wearing orange jumpsuits, are shown being marched along a beach. Each victim is accompanied by a terrorist in a black mask holding a knife. The video is called A Message Signed with Blood to the Nation of the Cross, and as it takes place in Libya, it raises concern that the militant group is expanding and has an affiliate outside of the group's core territory of Iraq and Syria. Thousands of Egyptians are said to have gone to Libya in search of work since the Arab Revolution there in 2011. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Turning now to the latest terror attack in Europe, police in Denmark say the suspected gunman in the Copenhagen shooting was a 22-year-old Danish national that had been known to authorities for a history of violence, gang activity, and possession of weapons. Investigation is now being focused on who or what group was possibly behind his actions. Jongun has the latest.
Police in Denmark are focusing their investigation on the gunman's movements before, during, and after the deadly twin shootings that ended on Sunday when he was shot dead by police. Danish intelligence agency chief says the suspect, a 22-year-old man born in Denmark, was on their watch list prior to the attack.
It's a person who was known to us, so yes, it was a person on intelligence's radar.
Withholding his name, authorities said the attacker was known to the police for several criminal offenses, including violence, gang-related activities, and possession of weapons. After assessing CCTV footage, police believe the man acted alone, but they're still trying to see if the suspect received assistance from others. The gunman opened fire at an arts cafe that was hosting a debate on freedom of speech on Saturday afternoon. Among those in attendance was Swedish cartoonist Lars Vilks, who has received death threats in 2007 when his depiction of the Prophet Muhammad as a dog was published. The suspect was shot dead early on Sunday after a second attack at a synagogue. The carnage killed 2 civilians and injured 5 police officers. The Danish Prime Minister says the shooting was a politically motivated terrorist attack, and she promised to protect freedom of speech and the Jewish community in the country. The incident brings up memories of the recent terror attack in Paris. The French ambassador to Denmark, who attended Saturday's debate, believes the motivation for the cafe shooting was the same as for the shooting at the French weekly Charlie Hebdo that left 12 people dead. 손정인, Arirang News.
North Korea is celebrating the 73rd birthday of its late former leader Kim Jong-il on this Monday, which it calls the Day of the Shining Star. The state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Kim Jong-un visited the Gumsusan Palace of the Sun at midnight to pay tribute to his father and grandfather Kim Il-sung. Young Kim was accompanied by key high-ranking officials, but his wife Lee Sol-ju and sister Eoh Jin-joo were not present. The state media also ran a live broadcast of Pyongyang residents setting off fireworks over the Taedonggang River to mark the anniversary. Lavish firework displays for key events have become commonplace in North Korea since Kim Jong-un came to power. The most senior member of Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party has stressed that the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II should be resolved within the lifetime of the now very elderly victims. Speaking to reporters on Sunday, Toshihiro Nikai said that he and Korean President Park Geun-hye agreed on the need to solve the issue during their one-on-one meeting in Seoul last Friday. Nikai, who is the top executive in Japan's ruling party, also said Tokyo must face the issue sincerely, adding that he would try to set the right conditions for a summit between President Park and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The two leaders have yet to meet one-on-one, despite coming to power a couple of years ago. There's hope the two sides can improve their frosty relations this year, as 2015 marks the 50th anniversary since Korea and Japan normalized their relations.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
Investors from China and Japan are becoming the key players in Korea's capital market that is suffering amid the country's sluggish growth and low prices. The combined net buying of Korean shares and bonds by them last year hit a high not seen since the 2009 global financial crisis. Kim Min-ji reports.
Foreign capital, especially from China and Japan, is pouring into the Korean financial market. According to the Financial Supervisory Service, Chinese and Japanese investors bought a net $6.7 billion worth of Korean shares and bonds last year. That's more than double from 2013 and an all-time high since just after the global financial crisis in 2009, when the combined total hit $6 billion. Experts say while other countries have been cautious when it comes to Korea, which has been suffering from slow growth and low prices, China and Japan have been aggressive in tapping into the market. Last year, Japanese investors bought a net $2.8 billion worth of shares on the Seoul bourse, while Chinese investors bought a net $1.8 billion in shares. Combined, it's a significant number considering that the total net purchases made by foreigners came to $5.7 billion. On the bond market, Chinese investors bought a net $2 billion in bonds last year, becoming the largest investor. In terms of bond holding, China ranked second, trailing behind the U.S. Experts say the inflow of capital from China and Japan can be attributed to China's rapid economic growth and Japan's quantitative easing programs. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korean conglomerates' cacheable assets hit a record high last year amid lingering financial uncertainties. Data from the Bank of Korea and local investment firms on Monday shows the combined cacheable assets of the country's top 500 firms reached over $144 billion as of the end of third quarter of last year. Now, the amount represents an increase of roughly $7 billion from the end of 2013 and a surge of nearly $100 billion compared to 10 years ago. Analysts attribute the spike to companies remaining reluctant to invest or having a hard time finding profitable investment opportunities due to economic uncertainties both at home and abroad. They point out that the firms should hand over more money to investors in the form of dividends that have remained the lowest among major economies. Now, major economies around the world are continuing to loosen their monetary policies, which analysts believe could lead to what they call an unspoken currency war. And with Korea's central bank scheduled to set its key rate for this month on Tuesday, all eyes are now on whether the Bank of Korea will follow its global counterparts. Our Hwang Jie has the details.
So far this year, 17 countries and the European Central Bank have eased their monetary policies, either by lowering their key interest rates or introducing quantitative easing programs. Canada, Switzerland, and 11 emerging economies like India and China are in this race, which comes as the countries try to prop up their ailing domestic economies. Now, pressure for further monetary easing by Korea's central bank is piling up. But analysts say it's unlikely the central bank will take action on Tuesday.
This month's monetary policy meeting is taking place right before the Lunar New Year holiday, and the central bank has not signaled a rate cut, so it will keep the rate unchanged for this month.
Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan also emphasized last week that it's more important to push through structural reforms than to debate over a rate cut. Still, analysts expect a rate cut to take place sometime in the second quarter this year.
The Korean economy is not showing signs of momentum for a solid recovery so far this year, just like in the fourth quarter of last year. To give a much-needed boost to the economy, the central bank is expected to cut the rate in April or May before the U.S. Federal Reserve starts to raise its key interest rate.
Korea's low inflation rate is also giving the central bank room to trim its key interest rate. Consumer prices were running below the BOK's 2.5% to 3.5% inflation target band for more than 2 years in January. Some analysts say, however, that the central bank will not join the global move toward monetary easing, as there's no clear sign of it affecting the local financial market. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
The winds of change seem to be blowing through the global auto industry, with many of the world's leading automakers pulling factory operations out of emerging markets and putting them back in their home nations. Demand has slowed in countries such as Russia and Brazil, and governments have been offering automakers good reasons to come back to where it began for them. Our Song Ji-son reports.
The days of automakers busily building new plants in emerging markets may soon be over, with demand slowing in those nations and the growing need to create more homegrown jobs in their own nations. The Korea Automotive Research Institute says auto demand in the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, is expected to sag this year, especially when compared to recovery seen in developed markets like the US and Europe. The Russian market is slumping at the fastest rate. It's projected to shrink 29% this year, marking negative growth for the third consecutive year. China, the world's largest auto market, still boasts annual demand of 20 million units, up 8% from last year, but that's slower than last year's 11% expansion. With emerging markets slowing, some leading automakers are going back to their roots. Ford, for example, relocated its Mexican truck factory to Ohio last year, following the U.S. government's decision to give auto firms incentives for creating new jobs in the United States. Japanese automaker Nissan also announced it was bringing operations at its Rogue factory in the U.S. state of Tennessee back to Japan. That said, Korean automakers Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors are still expanding their production output overseas. Domestic demand in Korea is limited, and they're looking to catch up with global automakers in terms of annual production units. 송지선, Arirang News.
The traditional Korean rice wine, makgeolli, is becoming more and more popular in China. Korea's Agriculture Ministry says the rice wine, exports of it to China jumped to more than $250,000 last year. That's up 187% from the year before. The increase is attributed to a decline in the consumption of hard liquor in China and the perception makgeolli is a healthy alcoholic drink. But while the overall volume of exports to China increased by 5% last year, exports of the Korean rice wine to Japan decreased due to a weaker yen. Now, Korea's population is aging really fast. It's a problem that poses a grave challenge to the government and healthcare workers, but the growing number of senior citizens does offer some industries the opportunity to target this booming and lucrative market.
Right, and it seems that manufacturers of medical devices are benefiting the most with this week's Industry Insight. Here's our Connie Kim.
Come 2026, about a quarter of the nation's total population will be 65 or older. Now, zeroing in on this lucrative market, Korea's medical machinery industry is targeting the silver generation. The domestic medical device industry has been growing about 5% annually over the past 6 years, topping $4.2 billion in 2013. And it'll only increase as demand rises with the changing senior demographic. But it's not a surge in cutting-edge operating room hardware that's leading the way. Looking at the most recent data, the top manufactured devices were dental implants devices and dental alloys used in fillings. About 9 out of 10 seniors in Korea are implant recipients. The country's leading dental X-ray manufacturer, Vatek, is just one of the many companies that see the potential for this market and is aiming to cash in.
It's important to use accurate dental X-rays, especially for seniors, considering that implant surgery comes with high risk. We expect a surge in demand for our X-ray machines.
And another fact, 1 in 5 seniors are known to be suffering from diabetes. Green Cross MS, a company that specializes in diagnostic tools, recently acquired a blood glucose monitor maker. The company says it's a landmark deal that'll help it focus more on developing technology for the elderly.
This will help us access the ubiquitous healthcare market. We are currently doing research on how a smartphone could be used to track heart rates, cholesterol, and hemoglobin levels.
Medical devices are evolving, going smart and high-tech. Analysts forecast the industry will continue to head towards helping older generations.
Medical machines have gotten smaller, small enough for elders to carry around. If the technology to send data from these medical machines to hospitals are developed, a new ubiquitous healthcare industry will open up.
Korea's changing demographics are affecting how the local market will expand. In the past, medical advancements and devices squarely focused on curing people and saving lives. But now, the landscape of the industry is shifting towards helping people live healthier and longer. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Well, let's continue with our look now through the global headlines, the other global headlines we're following this Monday afternoon from Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim at the News Center.
So, Eunice, it may be too early to say, but so far, the ceasefire declared in eastern Ukraine appears to be sticking.
Right, Jin-joo, mostly holding in eastern Ukraine is how the mediators Germany and France are characterizing it, though concerns do remain over the strategic transport hub of Debaltseve, which rebels are claiming is theirs and exempt from the truce agreement. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, in a televised address, gave the order to halt all fire starting midnight Saturday into Sunday. OSCE said it dispatched 20 patrols across eastern Ukraine to monitor the situation on the ground. But it said its monitors were kept out of Debaltseve, which pro-Russia rebels have fought to surround in recent weeks. The U.S. State Department also recently said credible evidence pointed to Russian ammunition being sent to the regions around that besieged town. Moscow has maintained all along it has not sent any troops or weapons across the border. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council is preparing a resolution that would codify the Minsk deal inked by Ukraine, Russia, Germany, and France. And staying with the UNSC, the 15-member governing body has officially demanded that Houthi rebels withdraw from Yemen's seat of government and engage in negotiations in good faith. A resolution drafted by the UK and Jordan received unanimous approval in an emergency meeting on Sunday. The UN body called for an immediate and unconditional withdrawal of Houthi forces, and an end to foreign interference, otherwise face what it called further steps. Meanwhile, in Yemen, tens of thousands continued their protest against the rebel movement over the weekend. At least 4 people were reported killed when gunmen opened fire. The Houthi militia, widely believed to be backed by Iran, has set up their own ruling body after seizing power in January. And Eurozone finance ministers will meet in Brussels later on this Monday to consider the future of Greece's bailout program. And ahead of that meeting, thousands poured into the streets across Greece in anti-austerity protest. Police said the rally outside of the Parliament House in Athens alone drew some 20,000 people. Crowds held up banners, some of them reading, "Stop austerity, support Greece, change Europe," as they said austerity policies were impoverishing the people. Protests also spread to cities beyond the country's borders. In Paris, a group of 2,000 people showed solidarity against what they called the Goliath of finance as they marched through the city center.
Good afternoon. It looks to be a wet and gloomy day today. Rain that started last night continues today, and it could possibly linger into tomorrow. So about 5 to 20 millimeters of light to moderate rain will fall across the nation. In the meantime, the eastern parts of the peninsula, including Gangwon-do, could see snowfall due to colder temperatures. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. So the high capital will climb up to to 6, while the top temperatures in Daegu and Gwangju rise to 7 and 11, and Busan will peak at 9 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 13 and 8, while Dokdo peaks at 6. Now, the weather for the Lunar New Year holiday looks promising. Once all the rain lets up tomorrow morning, skies will remain mostly to partly sunny, and the highs will remain above the 5 degrees here in the capital. That's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Newsline at Noon.
Yes, Jin-joo and I will be back at the same time on Tuesday. Until then, goodbye.